you have to think about how it looks. I mean, it's a sad thing, but ultimately, your hair is very significant to your self-worth as a man, sadly enough, until at such a point that you decide, actually, let's shave it and get rid, but yeah, I totally get it, man.
Yeah, the moment in time, it's choosing that moment of when do I just start cropping it is because you could do it too early or you could leave it too late. Leaving it too late is probably worse though.
Yeah, you know what? Like I say, basically, it's very difficult to figure out how to do it. Anyway, we're talking about hair. I mean, I don't know why we started talking about hair. I mean, because literally it's not that interesting a topic. But I just noticed, Adam keeps cutting his hair. Like, why? And I think it's because, we have to think about it as we get older, right? Big deal. All right. Anyway, welcome everybody to Brainfood Live on Air. We are on episode. I need to get Facebook go live. Give me 1 sec. I really should do this in an automated way. So welcome everyone, Brainfood Live on Air, episode 50. We are talking internal mobility today. It's going to be a fantastic show. We have some amazing guests coming to join us. And also we have some more dial-ins from the US with Lars Schmidt. He's also going to come in at the end to give us an update on the COVID-19 project he's working on, which I think everyone needs to be aware of, given that that's the topic du jour. Anyway, before we kick off, I just want to because we sort of stream this, and last week I messed up. Everyone on LinkedIn Live didn't actually see it. So if you're on LinkedIn right now, can you just please say you're there? Let me know. I've actually got Amanda on LinkedIn looking at this, and she's going to confirm for me that you're there, because I actually can't see on this screen. Everyone on Crowdcast, if you're there, can you please just say hello? Let me know that you can hear what I'm saying. And again, on Facebook, the Facebook group, I can't actually see whether you're there. But I've got a friend of mine also checking that out. Emily's on there, so can you please say hi to Emily and make sure that we're all on stream and everyone can hear us. That would be great. Okay, so before we kick off, I need to say a quick word to our sponsors today. So thank you very much for EASYRECRUE, who are our sponsors this week. A whole lot of very interesting tech coming out of France. I think it's going to be, a good decade for French tech. Lots of interesting things. I think EASYRECRUE are definitely one of those. Basically, they're a one-stop business to handle everything from talent acquisition to assessment to management and all the rest of it. I think very interesting product for people who want to tear everything out and get one thing to do all of the rest of that stuff. So check out EASYRECRUE. They're also going to produce an internal mobility product, which I believe is soon to be launched. They've got an ebook coming out, which is not out yet, but you can actually sign up for this and get it downloaded. I'm told it's supposed to be a very good resource, so feel free to download it for free there, or at least register in order to get the free download. Anyway, thank you for EASYRECRUE. Okay, we're back, and we're back with Adam Gordon. So Adam, how are you doing? How was the Netherlands? How was TA Live? I missed all that. I hope it was all okay.
Yeah, it was great. So I True Amsterdam was on Wednesday. That was fun. It was good tracks. I led a track on talent pipeline automation. 36 people in the room. I think 36 people contributed to the track.
Fantastic.
And I really love the fact that they are so data driven. They're interested in funnels. They're interested in conversion metrics. They're not thinking we need applicants. They're thinking about how do people come through the funnel, and they're really data driven and they're brilliant. So that was good. My Spider-Man kilt went down quite well, and then after the sort of formal True Amsterdam, there was True Boat.
Yes, I saw that. Right. I had a ticket and I missed it, so I was really not happy with that. But yes,
9 p.m. the boat was leaving. I was last on the boat. I took one step towards getting on the boat, and then took the foot off the boat and decided I'm not getting on that party boat. I can't get on a party boat. I would end up being partying all night, and I had a lot of responsibilities the next day. So I was just being kind of sensible and boring, and so I was the only one that didn't get on the party boat.
But, I see. Very sensible.
Exactly. TA Live was a great event. So I really enjoyed standing in for you on the recruiting Brainfood fireside chats. Mm-hmm. So I had five excellent guests, 25, 30 minutes each, just an interview. Tell us about your life. What books do you like? What habits have you let go in the last 5 years that have improved your life?
Some interesting people in the Netherlands, isn't there? It's a really good group of recruiting talent, I think, in the Netherlands. I think there's some really smart people there.
I really couldn't agree more. And I mean, I had more intelligent conversations about recruitment than I have basically pretty much anywhere, I have to say.
Yeah, so we love the Dutch. They are very, very good at this job. For some reason, they've always been like weirdly ahead in a lot of areas. I remember way back when LinkedIn was still like a niche product. For some reason, the Dutch are all over it, sort of at a very early stage. You're using it as a CRM whilst we were still using, co-located software. So yeah, they're really far ahead. So
I think the reason for that is because they've got 17 million people in half the land space of Scotland. It's really hard unless you've got great technology and great processes. It's really hard to have visibility on who is your addressable market, who are your candidates, and it can become really confusing, much more confusing for them than almost anywhere else. London's got a similar issue. Silicon Valley's got a similar issue.
Yeah.
But I think there are, of any like major country, the Netherlands, like as in not Monaco, as in like a proper kind of sovereign country, the Netherlands has the highest density of population of any country. So
yes, and per capita, they still, I think, have the most LinkedIn users than anybody else. Per capita. Yeah, so they're still all over it. So anyway, worth paying attention to what's coming out of the Netherlands. They've got some brilliant recruiters, brilliant recruiting tech as well. Anyway, moving on, let's talk about recruiting Brainfood. Anything interesting for you last week? Did you get a chance to read it? Maybe you didn't with all of your traveling, man.
No, I did. So I'm always interested in LinkedIn outreach, and so I enjoyed the article which was about here's a proven method for doing it. And I thought, okay, here we go, because it was banging on about personalization at the start, and I was like, okay, so this is not new. Although a lot of people do seem to think, Bill Berman certainly says, messages with no, a LinkedIn invite with no message attached to it actually does better than a LinkedIn invite with no message attached to it.
That's correct. It's totally been validated. A guy called Nicolas Darcis, who is a Belgian dude, I think.
Yeah.
Nicolas, I think that you are Belgian. I hope you are. Having said that, he also did the experiment and he confirmed it. But this technique was really interesting in terms of how to personalize it if you want to personalize it. There was a method of doing it that essentially scaled it up in a remarkable way. So I've just shared the link there into the chat stream. Please take a look. It's basically a way of using a number of products to extract data, populate it, create a mail merge, and then send it as a LinkedIn invite. And of course, if you wanted to do that, then you'd get that impact. However, LinkedIn don't like this. So it's a bit of a word of warning. I would say actually don't try this because you might actually come a cropper. It's just interesting from my side in terms of the experimentation, what you can do. And the reason why I put a warning in there, because one of my good friends actually messaged me later to say the two people that wrote that book, the founders of the Expand.io product, actually got their LinkedIn accounts kicked off because of this activity. So it's like, probably gray area. LinkedIn not happy with it, but check it out if you want to educate yourself.
Yeah, one other thing I would add about that is Phantom Buster is the core tool within here, and there's a million other things you can do with Phantom Buster. So
no doubt.
Not just this. There's other things that will not get you banned from LinkedIn by using Phantom Buster. So go take a look at that product and have a look around.
Someone please share Phantom Buster's email on sort of their sort of website on the chat streams that you're on, because that's definitely a product people need to check out.
The link to their website in the dark web.
Yeah, it's not that dark. It's they're kind of okay. For some reason, LinkedIn don't kill them. So yeah, we like Phantom Buster. Okay, yeah. What else was interesting, Adam?
As always, I enjoy Smashfly's recruitment marketing report.
Essential reports, absolutely essential. Why do you like this, Adam?
Because they get me all the data that I don't have the time or money to go and get myself to use for different things. But it also really confirms how badly we're doing. 46% of Fortune 500 employers have got a recruitment marketing strategy. That's shocking. That is awful. What do the others do? I mean, I know that companies like Berkshire Hathaway only have like 25 people in them, you know, but almost all of them have got tens of thousands of people, and they don't have any actual recruitment marketing strategy. That's awful.
Yeah. Is that number going up? Because basically Smashfly do that year on year, don't they? It's an annual report where they're tracking the benchmark of I think the US FTSE 500 or something. So did you read that number was going up, that percentage, or was it going down, or what?
It has gone up, but it's gone up by almost nothing. I can't remember what it was in 2019, but it was something like 44.
Right, it's just creeping up there.
It's really dire how slow that's growing.
Really interesting.
The statistic I couldn't find though from the report was the one that I thought was really shocking last year was that 4% of Fortune 500 employers send anything more to their talent networks than jobs. All they do is blast jobs out to them. And there was only 4% that sent anything different to jobs. I couldn't find an equivalent statistic this year. So if there's anybody listening to, or watching the show who has read the in more detail than me and wants to give me that number, then that would be quite interesting, because I couldn't find it.
That sounds really low to me. So I wonder whether I'd be interested to know how they questioned that, because I would imagine we should know a little bit more about recruitment marketing and nurturing than just blasting out jobs these days. So yeah, I'd be interested in what the methodology is.
Well, in the Netherlands market, it would be maybe 4% are not doing it. 96% are properly nurturing candidates. So.
Yeah, I can believe it. I think they're definitely ahead of us in recruitment marketing. That seems to be the way. US, Netherlands, and UK somewhere behind those two, I would say. Yeah. Okay, what else, Adam? What else is interesting in Brainfood last week?
Oh, I really enjoyed the I really enjoyed the Talent Advisor diagnostic tool.
Yep.
So are you filling jobs, or are you a talent advisor?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I like the way of thinking about that. Of course, most of us are not talent advisors. I think most of us are filling jobs and then straight on to the next one, straight on to the next one.
Yeah.
But look at the I would recommend going and looking at this and because I think what it's done is it gives people career. There's a lot of people in recruitment who don't realize what their career options are.
Yep.
You know, so I highly recommend going and taking a look at this, especially the diagnostic tool, because that lists, here's all the different things that you should be doing, and if you are doing these, you're a proper talent advisor.
Yeah. By the way, for people who haven't read this post, again, I've shared it in the chat stream on Crowdcast. Basically, this is by John Vlastelica, who fantastic, genuine thought leader, I would say, also practitioner, trainer, and all the rest of it. Someone who you should follow on LinkedIn. Really smart guy, and he's just basically produced like a business model canvas as a type of one-pager. So it's essentially here's a one-pager where you can take and just benchmark yourself and your team to see where you're at on this talent advisory sort of measure that he's got on, and where you might be missing. And as you say, Adam, it's one of those tools that might be useful for a recruiter or a new manager of a team of recruiters to think, where do I need to develop my team? Where do I need to develop myself? Where are the gaps in our capability as a unit? then I think this function is really good. He's a little bit cheeky because he updated his original post to say, oh, you need to input your email address to download the tool. He had a free download before. I think it's still free, but he's going to collect your email address. But I would be happy for you to put your email to John because he's going to just send you good stuff anyway. But the tool, I think, is definitely worth checking out. So please do check that link and check out the tool. It's for free. Okay. Yeah. What else, Adam, or is that it?
Yeah, I thought the robot writing thing was interesting. I think it was Stan Vazovich who suggested that. It's pretty clear that robots should be able to write like we do. But I was interested to know who was behind it. Who was behind the actual technology, because it was on the Vox YouTube channel, and presumably it's not Vox that's put the actual technology together. So they were just broadcasting the specific thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with regards to this, basically it is the idea. I mean, we've done a few shows already about how copywriting can improve. We had Mitch on, we've had Katrina Hutchinson on that gives some amazing advice. People loved it. But then, you see this going on that I've just shared it again in the link there in the chat stream. And basically it's a machine. It's a software that understands what people tend to click on, aggregating lots of data, and then simply producing the message, producing the advert. And the question is, are we going to get to a point where actually copywriting is demonstrably better as performed by a software than it is by a human being? So really interesting food for thought. I'm not sure I've got a position on it yet, but it strikes me that, it's going to be quite interesting to see where the world's going, because that technology is right here now. It's not like we're not talking sci-fi. Nope. This is happening. So worth checking out. Yep. Okay, cool.
Well, one last really quick one. I know we're going to come on to COVID-19 later, but Harvard Business Review's article about here's the 10 different things that an employer should be doing around coronavirus, and if you're not doing these things, then you need to catch up. Of course, I have diligently implemented them all within my business, and it's something that's a serious issue. I feel pretty relieved for some of the events organizers who have come out okay because of the timing on things, and I think there's going to be a few casualties here in the events area, of course, because I know some of them. But I mean, of course, things like leisure, hospitality, transportation organizations.
Dude, no one's gonna escape this. This is massive downturn. I think you're talking already countries going into recession. Yeah. There's going to be a massive correction in terms of how we behave as workers, as employees, as citizens. We're by no means through it. If you study the epidemiology of it, us in the UK, we're on the same track. As we've seen in Wuhan, and as we've seen tragically in Italy, it's urgent stuff. It's desperate, intense times. We will be talking about that. I'm actually quite tempted to get Lars back on as almost as a regular, just to give us an update to see what the HR community is doing. He's kind of become a locus for all of this stuff, and he's the guy you got to follow for it. So I'm keen to tap his knowledge to see where we're at. But anyway, that's later on in the show. We are talking internal mobility. That's why these folks have signed up. Internal mobility, Adam. Do you care about it? Why aren't we doing internal mobility right? Give me 60 seconds on this before I bring on smarter people like Andrew Gadomski and Katrina Hutchinson-O'Neill, who's going to help us talk through it.
So I really do care about it. I think it's something that separates high-performing organizations from those that are not high-performing, and it's lazy to just constantly go trying to fill jobs from the outside. It's bad service. It's bad for employee engagement if you're not providing opportunity. I also really believe that in an era of progressively more gig workers, I don't know, that temp worker regulation that I have deliberately body swerved 35 something.
IL 35, yep.
Yeah, I've deliberately avoided that subject, but I think things like that cause a bit of risk to it all. But yeah, I mean, gig workers, remote workers, there's lots of different reasons why our workforce is more kind of fragmented than it was ever before. And I think employers have to be considering their internal talent pipeline in exactly the same way as they're considering their external talent pipeline. There's no reason to differentiate between the two.
Well, that may in fact be one of the issues, right? I mean, I think as recruiters, we feel it's an external job. I mean, immediately you get a requirement, you don't immediately look into your company kind of organogram to think who else could do the job in the business. You're going out, and most of us are just banging an ad out straight away. So there's a focus shift there. I think there's a lot of politics involved as well. You know, how are you going to take someone from another team? So we have to handle that issue. And I think there's also issues about what how you're targeted as a function. Because I can imagine a head of TA might be told to grow a business, and of course hiring internally, you're not growing in a net way. You're simply taking one Peter to pay Paul. So I think there's lots of things in the way there. But let's get Katrina on. She can help us talk through it. I can see Andrew as well. So I'm going to see if I can get them both on at the same time, and we'll see where we go.
But genuinely, I think that employers need to be thinking about their addressable market. Who can do this job, whether they're internal or they're external. I don't think they shouldn't be saying I need to go external or we need to make an internal hire. They need to be considering both. They need to have one pipeline.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think if you sort of asked everyone on here, they would agree with you. The question is, why doesn't it work? And what are the barriers, and can we unblock some of those? So, here we go. There they are. So, Katrina, Andrew, welcome.
Welcome to you.
Great. Katrina, let me kick off with you. I mean, firstly, for the people who don't know you, can you just introduce yourself quickly to the people watching?
Yeah, sure. So I think I've been around in the TA world for quite a long time because I'm really old now. So I started out in RPO world, moved into internal, heading up recruitment for a few of the bigger companies in the UK, and now spent my time splitting my time between doing management consultancy on talent acquisition and boutique RPO. And I promise this isn't a sauna. This is my office. I don't generally work out of a sauna.
You know what? The last time I had you on the show, I remember you being in a bathtub.
I was in a bikini.
There seems to be a theme. I mean, at some point it's going to go not safe for work. I get that feeling. Anyway,
do you notice the little hand grenade of offense that Katrina just chucked in there as well? Because she just said she's old, but she's the youngest person on this screen.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
I'm sure that's not actually true.
might be being impolite to Andrew there, but I'm not sure that's true.
Oh, right. Yes, true.
No. Anyway, I'm clearly one of the oldest.
Andrew Gadomski. For the people who don't know you, can you just quickly introduce yourself to the crowd, sir?
Sure. I'm from New Jersey, New York area. That's where I'm calling in from today. I run Aspen Analytics. We're a management consulting organization. We use data science to help large-scale employers and government agencies make decisions around recruiting and workforce analytics. So that's what I do. Been doing that now since 2006. And so most of the organizations we deal with, they're dealing with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, in some cases, millions of employees.
Yeah. So obviously, I mean, that's a great segue to the first question, Andrew. You're dealing with large scale businesses. Not to say internal mobility isn't an issue for a smaller company, but I think it's particularly an issue as you get bigger, right? So what would you say is the state of internal mobility? Are we doing it well? Are we not doing it well? And why do you think we are where we are?
I think where companies who are doing it well have made some clear lines and definitions about their use of contractors or temporary labor and employees, and having almost a break between the two. So an organization that says our employees deserve career laddering, learning and development, certain types of engagement that the rest of our workforce doesn't get because they're contractors and they're employed by somebody else. I think that's almost like the entry point into a different type of dialogue. Because then when you're saying, well, I have people who work for me, well, this group over here are the ones that we've chosen to develop and we've chosen to move around. And so you start thinking differently around how often do I engage with them about career conversations? My retention strategies start to shift, and the concept of career laddering becomes very real. And so when you open those jobs, the first question you ask is, who do we have that's currently on this career ladder that we can move around, and how much disruption can we make inside the business and move others, right? There's very few companies with that level of sophistication, but those that are doing that have a very different experience around internal mobility.
So that's a very interesting point, Andrew, and it's the first controversial point, actually, because I thought you would actually make a different conclusion to that. But what you're saying is companies that are able to basically differentiate between the different workforce populations, and the ones that prioritize the guys on the payroll are the ones that do internal mobility better.
I think they do it differently. I think they do it very differently because, better, that's a judgment, right? I think the difference is that they have a discipline, right? So internal mobility can easily be, I want to get Sally or John or Juan or whoever to come, over to this team. That's an informal way of doing it. There's the actual concept of, on a regular basis, evaluating what are our career ladders, how many people have we moved, did we move them exactly when we said we would? Do they feel good about that? Those dialogues, if they're happening, it's likely happening with employees. And then what's interesting is that the companies that have the contractors that are more separate, they convert more of those contractors into their employee. And so I think that the dialogue is just very different. And those who do it, they usually experience slightly longer retention.
That's an interesting point, Andrew, and I want to sort of explore that a bit further. But let me go to Katrina right now. What are your thoughts, not specifically on what Andrew just said, but on the state of play for internal mobility as you see it?
Yeah, so look, I think it's fraught with a myriad of issues, right? One, I've not seen anyone that's doing it particularly well, and there's a bunch of reasons why. Some of the stuff that Andrew's already mentioned. There's the internal politics around internal mobility. Who's having those conversations? If you've not been identified as special, if you're not identified on your talent pipeline on the radar for some reason, you're very much dependent on either great quality internal mobility content coming out of the HR function, wherever that may be sitting, whether that's in TA or elsewhere, or you're dependent on a line manager who may or may not be motivated to have those conversations, to be talking to people about other options. To bring to life an example, from a past company many years ago, we always had a standing joke that internal mobility was most successful for underperformers. And the reason for that is if you'd somebody who was a bit crap on your team, frankly, you'd be giving them a decent performance rating and actively talking to them in their performance appraisal about other opportunities that they could move to. So, and it was a joke because there was a big element of truth in it, that line managers, sadly, were not actively having conversations with their top performers about roles that would take them away from their function. So
it never occurred to me that
I can see you're dying
happening.
to make a comment on that, Hung.
No,
You're shocked and appalled.
I am shocked and appalled, but that's a classic example of misaligned incentives, isn't it? Because the hiring manager might be sitting there, he or she wants to keep hold of their talent because, hey, they're measured on performance and whatever. You've got Joe here, who obviously you've decided is average and you want to move on. But if you give him a bad rating, no one's going to take him. So you say, hey, he's our best performer. You inflate sort of his profile.
There's almost no incentive for the head manager of Arsenal to lose his or her best players, right? So that happens in scale where I don't want my best performers to leave my team because in some cases that might expose me as a manager and my ability to lead people I haven't made those connections with, and I haven't, it's a little bit more autopilot, a little bit more automatic, right? And so I want to see them succeed, but if I have this person leave, I now need to get somebody else in and acclimate my entire team to that person while at the same time being successful. And this is the difference between being a leader and a manager. Managers excel at this. They love it. Leaders, maybe. But managers know how to move a team around and to get them up to competency and enjoy moving people through different positions. And so I always advise our customers, like, who are your managers? They're the ones who are going to do internal mobility really well.
Okay. Talk to me about incentives, though. How do we incentivize a manager for doing that? Because it strikes me to just appeal to their goodwill and tell them, hey, listen, you should do it for the business good. That isn't going to fly. Like, you've got to make sure that moving people out of their team, moving great performance out of their team, they have to be rewarded in some way, tangibly rewarded in some way for that. Isn't that right? I mean, that's...
I think
I've not seen...
Katrina, you go.
No. I was going to say, I've literally not seen that actually working in any organization. So I've never seen anything in operation in any organization that genuinely rewards managers or leaders for the upwards mobility of their teams. It might be a footnote in somebody's appraisal at the end of a year, but actually counter that with everything that Andrew said about the expectations they have to continue to deliver, the stability of their team, actually controversially very often going against internal mobility.
Yep.
You get measured on the stability of your team. If you're attriting internally and you're becoming a feeder for other areas, you're getting the budget pressure because you've got to retrain those people. You're not getting extra budget apportioned to you for that. So I'd love to see if there were examples, but literally have yet to come across in my 20 years career one single example of a company that's really nailing that.
I think where there's maybe an exception to that rule is some organizations, especially in the financial and insurance sector, they have what's known as moving day. And so usually in the front part of the year, there's almost an annualized huge shift of people who are at grade 7 to grade 8, people who are at grade 8 to grade 9. And it's almost like an annual event. Morgan Stanley, Credit Suisse, a number of others have these kinds of mechanisms that move people through career ladders. And it's an annualized event that's pushed back to performance management and so on. That also happens in U.S. government agencies where there's annualized events where people are moved across career ladders, and the managers know that's coming, right? I think that those are huge exceptions to the general rule, though.
But that's a pattern, isn't it, Andrew?
Do you think, Andrew, they're quite American as well?
It very well could be. I appreciate that my sphere is primarily U.S. headquartered oriented, and so I've seen that behavior more often than not on U.S. Some of the U.K. companies we've dealt with over the years, I
don't think so. I don't think it's necessarily international, Katrina, because you can see job rotations. I mean, what you're talking about here is taking it away from the hiring manager. Like, this program would roll across in an annualized way, as you say, Andrew, without necessarily the manager being a local decision maker on it. He or she knows that this is happening. And I think that may be one of the features to promote internal mobility is exactly that. You take it away from the line manager. You're gonna give up trying to incentivize that person because it's not gonna work. You're gonna take it away. You're gonna have another way to move these people around. Adam, you haven't said anything so far, so I wonder whether you wanted to come in and get your view on it, man.
Not at this point. I'm just listening because I think you all know more about it than me.
Fair enough.
I think Stephen's made a really good point in the comments there in terms of the moving day for trainee doctors and that being well known as the day that you don't want to end up in accident and emergency. But it's a really good point because that's the only place I see what you've described happening as standard in UK organisations is on graduate or trainee programmes. where they're built around the concept of people moving. But that's not necessarily per se about internal mobility. That's more to foster their understanding of the different components of the job that they need to do. And I have looked at where we've had talent programs, and that's a whole other cast in itself, right? How good are talent programs? Do the right people get onto them? How well are they managed? But where you have talent programs for mid-level to senior people in organizations and people are moved around, is that really true internal mobility, or is that because of the fact that they're not necessarily managed in the best way around who gets onto them, just another constraint where other people who might be more capable in the organization aren't getting the same access to the opportunities?
Yeah, I think if you have an elite group, that's always going to be that's not going to help the overall picture, because there's all kinds of ways in which people might get into that or be selected into that elite group. And it'll come down probably to managers doing performance reviews or whatever. But we also, I think we need to examine this idea that internal mobility is always going up. Why is internal mobility potentially lateral?
It should be.
Yeah.
It absolutely should be. And I think that we tend to think, in a y-axis here, right? And there's no reason not to move laterally, especially if what that means is that you're able to demonstrate similar competencies with different teams on potentially higher exposed or higher grade problems, right? So, I think that what ends up happening is where I think the lateral problem exists, is that some companies have not kind of taken a track where, how are we going to provide for our employees in terms of their career laddering? In some cases, and let's think about IT, we're going to create amazingly expert coders. Let's just say that's the case. Tremendous competency, ability to mentor others, ability to handle critical infrastructure-based problems or threats or cyber threats, whatever it is. Fine. That's a track. The other track is people who can manage those people, right? And we don't even really put people in a position to say, pick a path, or here are the ways to execute along those paths, because then lateral movement becomes a lot easier to understand, right? Lateral movement might mean moving to more areas of critical nature, and lateral movement might be the same pay grade, but it doesn't necessarily mean the same pay. You can certainly pay people more within the same pay grade. You can bump them up, then their grade stays the same, and they want to be an individual contributor, but they think that the only way that they can get advancement is by getting management in a team. That's not the case.
Yeah, so basically we need to diversify the ways in which people can actually progress in their careers.
That's right.
It's not a case of you're entry level, then you're an individual operator, then you're a team lead, and then you're a manager. And that's basically, no matter what the job, that four-tiered kind of process that everyone would recognize. We need to find other ways in which people can progress their careers. Financially is probably the biggest motivator, I guess. But not necessarily have to go through and become a different kind of person, perform a different role. Because as we all know, a great coder is not a great manager of coders. A great recruiter is not a great manager of recruiters. We know this.
Sales is one of the best examples of that, right? Is that why would you take, instead of you start someone at the associate level, right, and the smaller deals, and they learn how to close, they learn how to hunt, right? Why not put that person in a position to drive more revenue, with less time, over less time, in higher paying deals, in higher earning deals for the business, right? Instead, we say, oh, they're going to become sales managers. Well, maybe, but if they're not really good at developing folks, engaging folks, keeping them motivated, solving problems that are people oriented, if they're just able to close, give them the biggest deals ever to close, right? Why not shape and mold those competencies? That dialogue doesn't happen enough.
Adam, you about to say something?
I think
Go on, Katrina.
Oh no. So I was going to say, looking at it from a recruiter's perspective, I don't think that it's that recruiters are not interested in supporting internal mobility more. In fact, I'm probably sure like the 134 people watching this, how many of them have been in the situation where they're ripping your hair out, where you've gone through a hiring process only to find out, despite you've asked the hiring manager 16 times, if they've got an internal candidate that's suitable and they've told you no, and then one pops out of the woodwork at the very last stage and takes the role that you've been working on. I think the challenge that recruiters have is wanting to move from being recruiters to being skills supply chain managers within the organization, and seeing, a bit like Andrew, what you were saying at the beginning, seeing all of the different open source routes to talent as equal. It doesn't matter if somebody's internal, external, what route they're coming through. The blocker is typically visibility of that information. So if you look today, you're using ATSs or HRISs, both kind of shit when it comes to looking properly at skills. I did a survey last year of the RL 100 looking at skills mapping and asking them, of all of the skills that they've mapped and validated even during a hiring process, so this rich data set they've got of the people coming into their company, what did they do with them? And 97% said nothing. They just, that information stayed and died in the ATS. When you move into the HRIS, what we call skills are typically competencies that have been created by HR very often, as opposed to the lexicon of skills that you might want to be able to search for to really support skills supply chain management. What excites me is we're starting to see some tools coming onto the market that are really starting to address this, things like ProFind and companies like that, who are starting to visualize this concept of skills supply chain management in a different way. And where you're seeing that being really adopted are in some of the companies that Andrew's mentioned, who are already on that cutting edge of understanding the benefits they're going to get from that. I wonder how long it's going to take everyone else to catch up on that.
Yeah. So, and Adam, I'll let you jump in here, but just to summarize Katrina's points there, you're basically saying there's a visibility issue on the talent you already have. So from a HR stroke internal recruiter point of view, you are going externally because actually it might be easier to find external talent than it is internal talent, because you have no idea.
100%.
There's no skills map. You have no idea of the quality, the kind of skills that you have in the business, because it's simply sitting in multiple systems, and a lot of it's out of date. They're not connected. We're not connecting the data of this person when they were a candidate. So as they are as an employee, they're sitting in two different boxes. Adam, you have something to say?
Yeah, professional services firms actually do it really well. I worked at PwC back in the noughties. And I was, in the 3 years I was there, I was approached probably 3 times, I think it was, internally about different jobs. I took one of them, so I did 2 roles there in 3 years. And that's because we had effectively almost an internal social network. I had, populated by profile. A lot of people didn't, and they obviously weren't getting opportunities coming to them. But this remains the same. I was at a Big 4 firm in Amsterdam 2 days ago, and the talent acquisition lead for the Dutch market at this firm has decided he's been in role for 4 years, and he has decided it's time to move on. Talk to his boss about it. His boss agrees, and he's got 4 different internal applications happening. He's got an interview today for one of them, and the other 3 interviews are happening over the next 2 weeks. So they've got an internal job board, and it's really, really great. They got 280,000 people in this firm. They have to do it that way, or else they're going to just waste a huge amount of money and just keep bringing people in from the external.
It's interesting that you say PwC, because we've got a few people in the chat stream there saying +1 to Deloitte and all this type of stuff, which I totally get. But I do wonder whether there's kind of an inherent advantage professional services companies have for this. Because of the nature of their work is typically project work. People rotate into projects anyway. So the sense of them moving internally, I think, is already there. Now, what can we learn from how they do it? Is it possible for a non-PS company to try this? You're running a factory, or you're running a call center, let's say. How can we learn a few of these things, and what would you apply to that context?
I think that you have to be somewhat, let's call it goal-oriented or mission-oriented, right? And so every business has got probably 3 or 4 things that it's trying to advance in its growth strategy, whether it's certain parts of R&D, developing certain products, et cetera. Once you kind of have alignment to what those are, you need to start addressing career ladders to those missions, right? To those goals. And I think that's basically what like Deloitte has done, or Accenture, right? They're basically large consulting organizations, or they're really staffing organizations. You're hiring outsourced help to help you move the needle on something relatively strategic, or that is technology oriented or outsourcing oriented, and they're making money on every person who's on staff. That's how they make money. So they've had to do this. There's no difference in trying to say, what are the major projects that we have, the major initiatives that we have, and how is our resources going to change on those initiatives over time? What are those competencies we need to develop? And now we need to measure career laddering back to those major missions or those major objectives. And then once the employee base understands that, they're like, oh, I want to work on that. What are the things that I need to do? And what's my career ladder to get there? That sounds like really easy because I just said it in 60 seconds. But these are the paths. You've got to have that transparency of the major mission, or missions, and saying, here's how you're going to get expertise or management in those areas. And then you're getting rewarded because we're achieving significant goals of the business.
I think what you've got at the minute as well is a number of things coming together that I think will create a virtuous loop on this. So traditionally one of the biggest blockers to internal mobility in the sorts of roles and organizations, Hung, that you described, those that are typically have jobs that are fixed to a center or a team, has been this concept of being able to work flexibly or remotely. I can't believe we're this far into it and we've not already mentioned Corona for a second time. But one potential benefit of people having to, for whatever reason, work from home, particularly if those are jobs that they didn't traditionally do from home before, might be proving to organizations that you don't physically have to be in a certain location to do a job. Like I literally live in Scotland today because 9 years ago, when I got a promotion in RBS, the only way I was allowed to take that promotion was to physically move my entire family from Belfast to Scotland, even though it's only a 30-minute plane journey away. Because at that time, the view of the organization was you couldn't possibly do a job there where you had to be somewhere 2 days a week and do a 30-minute plane journey.
Right.
Whereas
so what you're saying is distributed
I don't think
working.
I'd have to move.
Yeah, distributed working would unlock more opportunities within a business because the location requirement starts to recede. The idea that proximity, sort of geographical proximity is relevant will start moving further away. I think I've got a lot of sympathy for that. But on the counterpoint, I also think that your personal visibility of those opportunities might be reduced because oftentimes you hear about jobs in an informal way. And I think that's also one of the problems. Like if you're sitting next to someone who is in the know in an office environment, you probably will have better access to the internal intelligence that's not in a system, that's not written down, that, oh, there may be an opportunity in this department there, you should take a look at it. Whereas if you're not, either socially connected or physically in proximity, then that's going to be a challenge for you also. So that part is also worth a challenge. Adam, I think you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm going to say Bill Gates thinks that technology can solve absolutely everything. I'd go a little bit further than that and say a talent pipeline can solve absolutely everything. So my question is, why should we be considering our talent pipeline, our external talent pipeline, any different to our internal talent pipeline? Why is it not just one pipeline?
Why? Wait. Are you saying that?
I don't think we should.
You saying that it's two? Because I've only run businesses where it's one.
Yeah. Well, that's all well and good. We're all on the same page, guys. So let's give us all a slap on the back for that. But the reality outside of this crowdcast is that that's not the case. No. Because you're looking at companies, and I'm going to give an answer to Adam on this. I think, and people who are heads of department in TA functions in corporations, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think these people have been given a growth headcount typically, and they need to hit a certain number. You need to help us grow our company by 200 heads in this department. okay, that's great. Hiring internally doesn't help me do that. It's literally moving one person from one seat to the next. That may be great for the person, but hey, I've got this target to hit, and I'm not moving the numbers there. So how is that a problem, or have I just invented that? Because I have just speculated there.
I think it's a really real problem, and it's a real problem on a number of fronts, not least because even in your internal hiring budget, the domino effect is really poorly catered. So if you have an uplift in internally, and therefore you've got a recruiter role 3 or 4 times over to ultimately fill each of the roles that you've created vacancies for through internal mobility, and you're not going to get extra budgets or heads to do that work, you're again kind of stuck, right? And I've seen that happening in multiple different companies.
Great point. So what you're doing is creating a vacancy that you then have to fill. So the incentives aren't aligned for that for the recruiter. You're just saying it's like, oh, I'm just creating extra work for myself. I'm not making forward progress, and I've actually just created another vacancy. I'm not doing that. I don't
think recruiters think like that, though. Honestly, I don't think recruiters think like that. I think heads of TA do, because they're the ones that have to deal with the challenge of balancing the budget and the workload. Honestly, most recruiters that I've ever worked with or have ever worked for me would see the huge benefit of putting an internal candidate into a role given an option.
Do we then need a new function that recruits only internal candidates? That his or her remit is literally only to recruit internally, and we just remove this kind of dilemma from that person?
I don't know if we need.
So I've had that. I've built that in teams before.
Yeah.
Well, where is it? Can you give me an example?
Yeah,
tell me about it.
It's patchy, and so I did that in Nationwide. We built that. We had a team of people who. It was 2 people who just looked at internal mobility. But Andrew mentioned at the top of this conversation the politics that you get internally, where you're effectively actively poaching, even if you can get visibility of the skills internally. Back to my original point of how do you supply chain manage something that you can't see, even if you manage to build that through whatever means and get some visibility of who you should approach, the impact of that in the organization. And also, weirdly, very often you've got a longer lead time to move somebody internally than you would do if you just hired somebody externally. I've got someone externally, might be able to start in 2 or 3 weeks. Internally, I'm sorry, you can't have that person for 4 months. And that becomes a factor in it. So I think the only way that really works truly effectively and seamlessly is if there's genuine top-down commitment in the organization, clear rules around what happens whenever somebody gets an internal role and how quickly they can be released, and none of the sacred cows and kind of ring fencing around this person's too important to move. And also if the organization is open to the fact that means there'll be an internal marketplace for talent. And that all requires a lot of maturity that I don't think exists for different reasons in many companies today.
Yep. Adam, you said something.
That's my soapbox anyway.
Just look at Colin's point. So he said doesn't extensive internal hiring move the problem from one place to another, and there's still going to be a gap needing to be filled somewhere eventually, isn't there? Now, if
the domino effect,
it's true, but if you're doing a lot of it's upward promotions, then it's harder to hire at more senior levels externally than it is at more junior levels. So if you're moving people up, I'd rather be filling an entry level position than a director level position. Bingo. So yeah, that's
Colin's
that's the chess move, right?
Sorry.
Yeah, that's the absolute chess move. One of the things that I'm working on actually as of last week was that exact thing, tracking how many jobs can we actually disrupt internally when we open up a new one externally. Because the idea being that we should probably be moving people around internally in such a way that the external job that we have to open is more likely for us to fill based on speed, diversity, and our take in the market. Why open up a purple squirrel job when I can open up a gray squirrel one in the neighborhood?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And maybe that takes a little bit more effort. I'm not saying it doesn't take more effort, but to not have the dialogue creates a lot of work for recruiters. And then what recruiters end up having is now they're getting jobs that are, let's just say, not easier. Let's call them smoother, right? A little bit smoother. They're not as stressed. They're able to process. They're seeing successes faster and more often What a great opportunity for a talent acquisition leader to say, I've got a happy team. I'm not giving them hard, really, really hard stuff with a lot of pressure. I'm giving them good work where they're successful and they're gaining their skills and capability. This is the right kind of dialogue.
That's super interesting. Like maybe it's about making sure that the creation of don't create hard jobs, basically, because that's going to just lead into these, downstream issues for talent acquisition. Adam,
the thing is, if you've got a purple squirrel vacancy internally, you might have a red squirrel and some blue squirrel dye, so you end up with the purple squirrel. Yeah, that's better than getting one from external.
Oh, Adam.
I've actually had no idea.
There is a little bit as well to add. There is a little bit to add into it as well about the halo horns effect that you get with internal and external. Yeah. So speaking as someone that does consultancy, and I'm sure, Andrew, you'll have the same. There are many times where I go into an organization and I'm literally telling them stuff that they already knew, but because I'm coming externally, they give it more credence. I see the same thing happening in hiring processes. So a candidate who's coming externally, they know less about them. So therefore, potentially, there are some negative aspects to that candidate that they don't know about. They know the internal candidate better and they give more credence to the external candidate. Yeah, and I've seen that happening a lot in hiring processes, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, but then the person joins and they join, okay, when they got a lot of credence for the recruitment process, they then join, but now they're one of you. Actually, they're not, their view is not prioritized anymore. It's the same as everybody else's. That's also what happens.
You've got to also step back. You got to step back from a strategic perspective and say, what should we be able to recruit by kind of putting up the help wanted sign? If you're Walmart and you have trouble if you actually say we have poor distribution center management and poor frontline supervision, that's an internal problem that would be critical, right? But at the same time, when those jobs kind of just relatively open, that organization should be able to naturally attract that type of talent when they need to, because it's so critical to their business. It's something else when, if you're coding all day long and you can't attract decent coders, your brand, your employment brand has failed you. Because if your sourcers are spending all this time getting the talent that's most critical to your business in volume, how did you not talk to the market? You've got to talk to the market about what's important to your labor. And if you're not, that's when your sourcers are doing all your critical roles. Your sourcers shouldn't be doing only critical roles, doing the ones that it is a purple squirrel because we don't hire this very often. They're difficult. And the market doesn't know that we have this type of talent. That makes sense. But like Facebook having to source all their coders, that'd be hysterical.
Okay, so guys, I'm just conscious of time, and before we close off this fascinating debate, I just wondered whether everyone could just think of the one thing, a business that wants to improve internal mobility. What's the one thing that they could do and should do in order to push the marble forward there? Katrina, let me go to you first.
I've got two answers. The easiest one is top-down communication about why this is important to the company. That's so easy to do. It costs nothing, and yet it's the one thing that doesn't tend to happen. The slightly more expansive answer would be invest in technology, or better, use the technology that you've got today to properly map skills in your organization in a searchable way to allow recruiters to as easily access the internal marketplace as they can the external.
Yep, great stuff. So you need C-level commitment. He or she needs to just tell the business this is not only okay, but it's promoted. This is behavior we want to see. You're doing good things for
Celebrate
the business.
It. Yeah.
Yep, you're doing
Celebrate
good
the
things for
successes.
business. And secondly, you need to basically understand who you've already got, because if you're sort of going blind, you have no idea what's actually in your locker, you're not going to reach into it. You've got to know what you've got and find a way to extract that data. Okay, fantastic. Adam, go to you.
Create an internal job board and make sure that create an internal job board, an internal social network, and make sure that job ads going onto the internal job board are automatically getting push notified to the right people.
Yeah,
it's a technology solution.
Yeah, this again, bolt on. So building on a sort of, I can imagine the stack if you're going to build on it, building on what Katrina just mentioned there. You get better data on the people you've got, but then find a way that they can talk to each other about job opportunities, basically.
And that exists. Push notifications in through Slack is straightforward.
Yep. There's ways to do this, I'm sure. Okay, Andrew, let's go to you to finish off. What's the one thing you think is a doable thing that people listening to this that want to improve internal mobility, what can they do?
Take the 3 roles that are the highest in volume and the 3 roles that you think are the most critical to the business. They may be overlapping, right? But sometimes they're not. And make up career ladders that say, how do we advance people in terms of their expertise if they were individual contributors? What does that ladder look like in our business? And if I wanted to develop them as frontline supervisors and then managers of managers and then directors of a business, how would I do that? And what do those levels look like? Do it for 6 jobs. It'll change your life.
Yeah. So you're looking at just don't try and eat the entire cake. Kind of isolate the key things that you need to do, focus on those, and then create the pathway where people can kind of explore and find a way through. Okay, fantastic. Go ahead, Adam.
One quick point. I don't think we covered this, but Baz put in the chat earlier that he's recommended to companies to extend their employee referral programs to internal referrals, which I think could have all sorts of banana skins in there. But imagine being incentivized. I'm going to refer that person to get out of my team.
No, but I'm kind of with that.
There's a bit of feedback in that. I've been referred 75 times by my team members. What are they trying to tell me?
That I'm a hot candidate, or they hate me.
I like the idea because I think we still need to get those incentives right. Because if we feel as if we're poaching, even the term poaching from one team to the other, straight away there's a cultural barrier there. We have to think about aligning incentives so that we know that moving people internally is a good thing for the overall business, and managers need to embrace that. Okay,
I got one more tip for you though.
Go ahead.
Just the same way that you would use Boolean, like in say LinkedIn or other places, do it on your own. Do it on your own firm. The taxonomy of skill sets is exactly the same for LinkedIn for your own internal employees as it is external. Yeah. So after you hunt for people outside, go hunt for people inside and see if they're available.
Or maybe even do it the other way around. I mean, perhaps you even start it from the internal search first.
Or don't split it up at all. It's just one pipeline.
Yeah, put them all together and see who wins. Okay, Katrina Hutchinson-O'Neill, thank you so much for your time. Great having you on the show. Andrew Gadomski, thank you so much for joining us from New York. We're going to say goodbye to you both here. We'll love to get you back on the show later. But thanks so much for joining.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to bring Lars on now in order to talk very quickly on COVID-19 and the responses we need to make. So thanks everyone for watching. If you want to hang around and just get a bit of an update on where we're at with various things associated with kind of TA and HR responses to what looks like a massive phase shift in the way in which we work. I'm bringing Lars on, and the reason why I bring Lars on because he's always good TV. But more than that, he's also been like massively on the case in terms of collating information and making it shareable for the entire HR and TA community about what we can do when essentially we might need to shift from co-located to work from home. So Lars, welcome back to the show. Just wanted very quickly, you could share with us where you're at with these projects that you've been working on.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to talk about it. It's it's continuing to evolve by the minute, it seems. The situation is really, I think, over the last 48 hours, altered the the kind of course of how companies are responding pretty drastically, especially here in the States. So the doc, in terms of I think key updates from on the doc from the last time we spoke, I created a new section around public impact to hiring / layoffs. I think we're already starting to see some of that, and unfortunately, I think we're going to be seeing more of that over the coming weeks and months. And so, wanted to create a running list so that companies kind of know, who's doing that and how that's impacting them. I also went through the resource section at the bottom. It's starting to become pretty dense, and so I reorganized that into categories to make it more user friendly for viewers to go in and actually find what they're looking for, whether it relates to kind of shifting to remote work, employment law implications, resources, etc. And so that's where the doc is now.
Yeah, so I've just shared this document to the crowdsource, sort of the Crowdcast chat stream. Basically what this is, I think it started off as like a communications document, didn't it, Lars? Like a collection of how companies were communicating to the public and to their employees if they needed to take action, and they should take action with regards to this COVID-19 epidemic. And that's now morphed into all kinds of resources that people can dive into. So if this is important to you, or you're in charge of any type of activity in relating to your company, you need to kind of check out that resource. I'm going to stick it in the newsletter next week, but don't rely on that. I've just shared it on the chat stream link there for people to take a look at.
Yeah, and one other update, Hung, is one thing we launched today is, there's conversations happening on a variety of different channels right now. And so I think people are hitting up their networks at first, and it's great for those of us who have networks so we can tap into, but there's a lot of practitioners who don't, and they're isolated, and they're scared, and they're under a ton of pressure. So one of the things that we launched today was a hashtag called coronavirus HR. And basically just trying to use that as a central kind of aggregation point for if you're, if you have questions, if you're tweeting resources, if you just want to join the conversation and look for some, camaraderie from peers who are kind of going through the similar stuff you are. Coronavirus HR, we just thought that was clean. There wasn't any traffic on that. And so I just picked that as a hashtag that we can all kind of use to have, our conversations on social and hopefully find each other, especially for those practitioners who don't have the benefits of large networks to tap into.
Yeah, you know what? That's very important, because I think a lot of us sitting here are well connected, either digitally, we're in parts of communities, and if we're in a kind of a big company, we've got team members and colleagues to deal with. But actually, a lot of people are actually working as HR people by themselves. Especially 50-man, 100-man business. That's typically a one-person job. Recruiters might have a similar experience. They have suddenly got this huge responsibility. And what do? Do you send people home? Do you force them to come in if they refuse to come home, work in the office? How do you look after the health of your staff? How do you deliver your services? All those things, I think, are all in the air. So we need to share what we know and help each other get through this period, I think.
Yeah. Look, hey, the reality is there's no playbooks for anything quite like this. There's versions of that. We've had experiences like this, like, 9/11 and some other, kind of significant globally impacting things. But I don't know that, we will collectively face something like this. And so with that, I think the ability to tap into each other. And again, we're going to be under a ton of pressure from our employees who are scared, our leaders who are looking to us. And when I say we, I mean, this isn't just HR leaders. This is recruiting leaders. This is, leaders who are interfaced with people in general. They're going to be looking to us for answers that we don't have. And so we're going to be doing the best we can with the information we have. So what's key is, broadening that pool of the information we have so that hopefully we can make more informed decisions. And part of that is accessing other resources and templates that peers have built. So you don't have to build something from scratch. And that's where this doc started with, like, the Coinbase template and other things like that. And then part of it is just having people you can talk to and be like, hey, look, this situation came up. I mean, you mentioned a couple of them. We're going to be dealing with stuff that we haven't dealt with before, right? Schools are closing en masse. We're already asking our employees in many situations to work from home. Now they're being parents at home and also employees at home. What does that mean? What can we expect from them? How do they navigate that kind of dual footing when obviously their kids are going to take priority? And so I think wherever we can shine a light on where those conversations are happening to help, create more information for practitioners to kind of tap into and get a sense of, okay, cool. Like, this is how they're looking at that. We can adapt that to my company, or they're doing this over here. If that's crazy, we're not going to do that, whatever. being able to tap more into a pool of information and responses, I think just puts us all in a better position to help our companies and our employees navigate this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is unprecedented. There's nobody. The fact that it's global and it's persistent, and it's happening at the same time. I've never sort of encountered a scenario where almost everyone that you would speak to, this is their first topic of mind. And it's you actually find I'm actually getting annoyed that it isn't the topic of mind. There's the odd person that is talking about something else. I'm thinking, are you crazy? This is the most important thing to talk about. So I think what you're doing there, Lars, is really important. So thank you for putting the doc together. I'll keep promoting that and setting up the Twitter chat. Super important as well. Adam, you about to say something?
Yeah, I've got a slightly different view about that, which is that I do see a lot of people who are like glued to the television, watching it, talking about it nonstop, rather than getting on with what they need to be doing. So there's a balance here. I think it's definitely important, but we shouldn't be paralyzed in everything else we're doing as a result of this. We need to just work out how to get on with our jobs, get on with our.
No, I think that's but I think that's exactly why we need to have this support, because I mean, what we don't want to do is spend all our time on it. But we do need to have like easy access to a template. I mean, that's a starting point. Like, how do you write a communication policy for work from home if you've never done it before? Well, here's some easy to go stuff you can just use.
I was going to say, I mean, part of what I think you have to think about too is like, let's look at this timeline, right? Like this week has been fucked up, right? I mean, it's been a crazy week. And so for practitioners, for parents, for just humans, right? Like keeping up, I think there are some people who've been really focused on this for a long time. And like, yeah, you need to be thinking about this and you need to prepare your companies, but like, just look at the last, even 72 hours, how quickly this has expanded. Like, how can it not be all consuming for a lot of people? Like, you have to find that balance. But I think that, we're in a period, there will be an adjustment period, especially I think we're in the beginning of it now, where it's like all this stuff is changing, societal change, social distancing, events canceled, remote work, school canceled, all of those things are happening in a span of days. And so that adjustment period, I think is gonna throw people off. I think companies have to understand that. Like, they're gonna, yes, we'll adapt to a new normal, whatever that's going to look like in the coming days and weeks. But like right in the middle of this period where it's like seismic shifts happening overnight for a lot of people, like, I certainly understand why that is front of mind and consuming for a lot of people, because they have, they have tons of questions. And again, they haven't experienced anything like this before. So I think we'll get there, but productivity is clearly going to take a hit. As it should, as we think about the human side of this, is how people are going to adjust to like whatever this new normal might be. And we don't know what that new normal is yet. Like, that's still coming together.
Quick experiment for all of the people still watching this show on the various channels. Can you just comment very quickly? Are you currently working from home, or are you in the office? Just put work from home or office in the chat stream. I'd be very interested to see kind of what the distribution is of the people watching this. I mean, obviously, I've been work from home for a long time, work remote really since this last decade. So for me, the disruption is actually quite minimal. But I can imagine people who are used to the rhythm of doing all of this, suddenly they're thrown off, particularly if they have been told suddenly that they may not be set up to do it, right? I mean, they're working off a laptop when they're used to working off a desktop. Even stuff like that can be confusing because, their home laptop is not configured in this way. So very, very interesting. Looks like home is happening.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, no, I don't mean to be rude, but I'm not sure how much useful information this is about Brainfood viewers, because a lot of Brainfooders work for themselves more than the average worker, and so
that's a massive assumption, my friend.
Plus it's Friday.
The reason why I say it's a massive assumption, and I'm confident it's an assumption, because actually I don't know that information myself. So this is something I would probably be keen to survey the community about. There's 20,000 brain fooders out there. I think most of them are actually working in office. But let me see if I can figure it out. Maybe I can figure it out in terms of the size of businesses they work in. Anyway, that's it for the show. Running over a little bit. So thank you, Lars, for popping in. I'm quite keen to kind of keep inviting you back if you're up for it, because these updates I think are super useful. Maybe we do a little run of this until touch wood, we all get through it in the right way. So thanks for joining us, Lars. Everyone who's watching this show, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure having you. I will send the analytics on the Crowdcast update via email shortly. Please do join us next week. I forget what we're talking about. Oh, I think we're talking employer branding, differentiated employer branding, meaning if you're already running or working for a company with a famous B2C brand already, how do you create an employer brand that is differentiated from that, which you may wish to do? You might not have a particularly reputable brand. Maybe you're working for, I love McDonald's, but I'm just using McDonald's as an example. And maybe they have a challenge. What is the sort of the EB challenge of working for a super famous brand that has a perception in a certain way? So please do join that show. That's already live. We'll have Chris Ray and Charu Malhotra on as guests. Thank you everyone for joining us. And also thank you finally to our wonderful sponsors, EASYRECRUE. They are a talent, basically they're a one-stop shop for everything you need to do for talent. So they can find the candidate, help you screen it, and help you manage the process as well. Check them out online. Okay, that's about it. I will see you all next week.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care, everyone.